Ladies and gentlemen, can I please ask you to take a seat?
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to St Andrews for this very important occasion, a marking celebration of 20 years of undergraduate women in St Andrews College. I'd like to welcome Her Excellency the Governor, her husband, our Principal, the Principal-elect as well is here with us this afternoon, the official party, students, alumni, and other very welcome and cherished guests. I will pass over to Onyi Nwamadi, who will give an acknowledgement of country.
Mayam, everyone. Good afternoon and a warm welcome, especially to Her Excellency, the Governor, Mr Wilson, our Principal, Professor Mark Scott, Vice-Chancellor, the new Principal, to our staff members and to my fellow colleagues and their parents. My name is Onyi Nwamadi, and I'm a Dalrib woman from the Meriam Mer tribe of the Torres Strait Islands. And like my mother, I would like to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women of this country, the ones who came before her and who will come after. I would like to acknowledge the women who nurtured, cared and fought for this land. We pay our respects to the elders, past, present and emerging. We pay our respects to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women who were students and staff members at this college for 20 years now, for what they left behind, who have left stories and paved the way. We remember that on this beautiful land in which this college is on, in which we live on, in which we laugh on, this land was lived on by grandmothers, mothers, daughters, sisters and wives, by the Eora people, the Gadigal people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Onyi. I'd now like to welcome our principal, Mr. Wayne Erickson, to give the welcome.
Your Excellency, the Honourable Margaret Beasley, Governor of New South Wales, and Mr. Dennis Wilson, Professor Mark Scott, Vice-Chancellor and Principal of the University of Sydney, former Chairs of Council, Mr. Charlie Taylor, Mr. Andrew Murray, former Principals, Dr. Hugh Cairns and Dr. Bill Porges, Principal Designate, Dr. Rob Leach, Senior Student, Miss Elizabeth Woodcock, Chair of the Foundation, Mr. Neil Cairns, President of the Alumni Society, Mr. Alex Ruddock, Councillors and Honorary Fellows of St Andrews College, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by thanking Onyi for her acknowledgement of country. The land we're meeting on today was an important place for the Indigenous communities of pre-colonial times, a place where men and women of the southern tribes would meet to talk, to teach and to learn on their way to gatherings in what is now the Central Business District. I acknowledge with deepest respect the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, their elders past, present and emerging, and I extend my respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. Well, it's my very pleasant duty to welcome you here to the dining hall, this great gathering place of the college community, to acknowledge an important anniversary in the life of this community. 20 years ago, we welcomed 50 undergraduate women as first-year residents into St Andrews, the first intake of fresher women in our history. This conversation about co-residency began long before 2002. At various times in the 70s, 80s and 90s, the Council, at the urging of Principals Cairns and Cameron, had considered the admission of female undergraduates. The replacement of the college's original 1867 Parliamentary Act in 1998 affirmed the possibility that a college now set up for the 21st century could indeed be co-residential. It was not until Remembrance Day, the 11th of November 2001, that a motion to make the college fully co-residential passed through Council, with only 2 votes cast against. The idea of admitting women as full members of the college community was highly divisive. Council Chair Andrew Murray, whose strength of leadership throughout was a vital element in the process of change to co-residency, encountered fierce opposition and more than one member of Council resigned over the issue. The senior student in 2001, Alex Knock, supportive of the change to co-residency, also fought hard against strong opposition to the change amongst the students. After such a long and sometimes painful deliberative process, the Remembrance Day decision represented a brave, all-in approach. This would not be, as it has been elsewhere, before and since, a few token places given to women, but rather a fast track to full co-residency. Principal Porges was given 3 months to find 50 women who would come and who would stay. And stay they did, most of them for 3 years, forming a committed core who were joined in their second year by another 65 women, so that in the second year of co-residency, the college was already 50% men and 50% women. This represented an extraordinary achievement on the part of Principal Porges, whose commitment to the idea of co-residency and his leadership of the multi-layered challenges associated with its delivery were defining features of his principalship. Even so, the leadership was conscious of the charge that this place would remain a men's college with women in it. And as a caution against this, Council established a special committee made up of students, staff, councillors and selected external experts to attend to all the nuance required. In addition to such vital mundanities as room allocation, bathrooms, menus, the provision of sporting and other performance opportunities, the committee dealt with the construction of a new pastoral and mentoring overlay, together with the first attempts to provide educative sessions about the expectations of what constituted respectful relationships in this newly co-residential community. From our friends at Wesley College, co-residential for 30 years by then, came a policy and procedures template that guided our own as we sought to set up the structures for an enduring community of women and men. For many of our long-term, fiercely loyal staff, this involved adapting to a completely new dynamic, and the college will be forever grateful for their on-the-ground contribution to making it work. The mostly male leadership of the Students' Club were tireless in their determination to rewrite their constitution and their culture to ensure structural equity and equality in participation in everyday life and in the opportunity for leadership. Whilst a number of male residents in those early years decided that this new college was not the place for them, mention must be made and praise duly accorded to the men who remained and whose contributions as allies hastened the progress of integration towards a fully co-residential community. Such efforts were guided by other men, Vice Principals Terry Bede and John Sargent, and Senior Fellow Ian Jack, whose strong commitment to the principle of young adult agency manifested as a necessarily light but nevertheless effective touch. Of equal importance was the appointment of Dr. Hester Wilson into residence in 2003, first as senior tutor and subsequently as vice principal. Hester has been the senior female presence in college for these 20 years, supported by a richly talented group of prominent senior women in residence who have given generously of their time and expertise and who, like Hester, have been outstanding role models to support their younger fellow residents, including Ellie Howes, the Dean of Students and subsequently senior tutor, whose commitment to academic excellence and her feminist perspective were indispensable elements of her many interactions with students in her decade in residence, and others, including Reingart Porges, Jenny Sargent, Minami Takahashi, Rebecca Reed, Jess Wilson and Gillian Bowen, and in particular my wife Deborah Marr, who in addition to her engagement with students on a group and individual basis has managed the extra burden of ensuring that this principle's perspective had the necessary balance with the many variations on the theme. And to return to the importance of a strong and consistent approach at all levels of the college, staff, students and council, I wanted to acknowledge the subtle strength provided by council over the course of these 20 years, not just in governance but also in personal engagement, and particularly from those women on council in the early days, the Reverend Theodora Hobbs, Professor Ros Croucher and Professor Jill Gordon, who were the first of a total of 14 women councillors elected so far, all of whom added enormous value and diverse perspective to council's discussions with their male colleagues on matters great and small, strategically sensible and devilishly difficult, cheerful and challenging. Margaret Mackenzie was the first woman to lead the college's business committee, and council in February this year elected Sasha Kovic, who was a fresher here in 2005, as our first female chair of council. On reflecting on my own introduction to this new co-residential college, I was reminded of one of those first 50 women students, Allison O'Brien, who in 2004 became the first woman elected to the Students' Club executive. In December 2003, as part of my application for a first position on staff here, Alison and I spent an hour or so together as she showed me around her college. I remember afterwards telling my wife Deborah that if this was the calibre of young men and women I would be working with in St Andrews, I would be very happy indeed to be part of such a community. Well, did we get it right all of the time? No. There were occasions where the pressure of a more complex day-to-day reality caused some of the strands of our theoretical integration to unravel. The impacts of alcohol on emerging adults are magnified in residential communities, and the challenges of managing this and other pressures contributed to incidents that caused real damage and hurt. In this regard, the college has had to face the trauma and address the challenge of sexual harassment and misconduct. And this week, the latest report on the impact of sexual violence on Australian university campuses has shown us that this scourge continues. And we must keep doing what we have done and whatever else is necessary to make the college the safest of homes for all who live here. This commitment began in the early days of co-residency when women on council and staff, in recognition of this reality, formed a reference group, working with women in residence to find solutions to these issues. These important conversations formed the basis for a more formal process which became known as Holding the Mirror, and which in combination with other initiatives has embedded a structured yet decidedly Andrews-specific approach to cultural review and renewal. The success of this project continues to rely, as in all things in Andrews, on the outstanding character and quality of the Andrews women, women who are strong in their dealings with fellow residents and insistent on the principle and practice of equity and respect. If culture is defined as the way we do things around here, then it's perhaps useful, finally, to examine the impact of 20 years of undergraduate women on that culture. We have seen our own version of the widely held view that the bringing of the other to formerly single-sex university colleges produces, at its best, a civilising effect on each gender, where the excessive extremes of each are modulated by the impact of the other. Conversely, we have seen that those rarer excesses, those outliers of unacceptable behaviour which remain, have greater potential for negative, far-reaching impact. In more positive terms, this co-residential community over the last 20 years has enjoyed clearly demonstrated greater success for men and women across the many domains of college life. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. In elevated academic performance, in men's and women's sport, in the creative arts on both the competitive stage and in the simpler joy of making music and art for its own sake, and in a vividly rich tapestry of social engagement which demonstrates a collective and individual energy in the willingness to be part of the lives of others and to have them be part of yours. This college began this journey over 20 years ago with trepidation, but with determination to succeed in creating a co-residential community that was faithful to the foundational values of St Andrews, yet which acknowledged the realities of the modern world. That journey is, of course, not complete, but ongoing, and we are delighted to take this opportunity to pause and to celebrate both the successes and challenges of this 20th anniversary of undergraduate women in St Andrews. Many thanks for joining us today. Welcome to St Andrews.
Thank you, Wayne. I'd now like to introduce Her Excellency the Governor of New South Wales, Margaret Beazley, to give the address.
Bujuri Gamarua, Dian Babana Gamarada, Garigol Nagara. Wani, thank you for that beautiful welcome to country, for making us feel part of the wonderful heritage of this country, and I think particularly today with your emphasis on the leadership of the community, which just so happens to be a female leadership. What a wonderful way to have done it. Thank you. It was very, very beautiful and certainly made me feel very proud to be able to be walking on this land. Thank you. In 1896, the Melbourne Punch published an article commenting that our mothers and grandmothers, those stately dames and noble women, are being replaced by the new woman, who loves to stand upon the platform, preach from the pulpit, rush to the polling booth, ride the bicycle, oh, my goodness, wear unmentionable garments. But on a midwinter's evening in 1913, no doubt wearing some form of those unmentionable garments, having already achieved the right to vote some 10 years earlier, but still not entitled to practice as a lawyer, be a Member of Parliament or a Lord Mayor of Sydney, a few dozen women students gathered on the frosted front lawns of not this college, but Women's College, to commemorate that college's 21st anniversary. Taking centre stage at that celebration was the performance of a play commissioned by Women's College's founding principal, the indomitable, I have to add, Miss Louisa MacDonald, who was also actively engaged in the Womanhood Suffrage League and the Women's Literary Society. The play would celebrate the achievements of this newly come-of-age college through promising a bright future for women's higher education. The play was entitled A Mask, and it was written in that Elizabethan allegorical style tradition by the then Professor of English Literature, John Legay Brereton. He was at that point still a librarian at the university, and the poet and very much polymath Christopher Brennan, who was then a lecturer in languages. The play featured a procession of notable women from mythology, history, the arts, and public life. Helen of Troy, Medea, Joan of Arc, Madame de Pompadour, Angelica Kauffman, Florence Nightingale, amongst others. And the apotheosis of the parade, perhaps unsurprisingly at that time, was that celebrated woman of science, Madame Curie. The message of the play, would not surprise you, was that women's position in society was not circumscribed by social norms that confined them to the home. The play, perhaps surprisingly, was received with acclaim by Sydney's academic and literary society. And this was a full 15 years before the writer Virginia Woolf had advocated for the intellectual, artistic, and economic freedom of women in that wonderful play, that monologue In a Room of One's Own, which was performed recently at the Belvoir Theatre. It was a full 25 years before that extended essay of hers, 3 Guineas, was published, in which she imagined a futuristic college where the daughters of educated men would study alongside their sons as a prelude to professional employment and economic independence. But in 3 Guineas, in a wonderful passage, Virginia Woolf described the traditions of institutions as they then were, such as those of Oxford and Cambridge. And she wrote in that withering way of which she was the arch exponent. It went like this: great-grandfathers, grandfathers, fathers, uncles, they all went that way, wearing their gowns, wearing their wigs, some with ribbons across their breasts, others without. One was a bishop, another a judge, one was an admiral, another a general, one was a professor, another a doctor, and some left the procession and were last heard of doing nothing in Tasmania. By comparison, Women's College, and indeed Sydney University at that time, would seem to have been a hotbed of what these days we would call progressives. Women's College, as I've indicated, opened in March of 1892 with 4 students, and that was a mere 11 years after the Senate of our wonderful university had resolved to admit women on an equal basis in 1881. Now contrast this with what was going on and happening in what was still at that stage called the mother country. Women were not admitted to degrees at Oxford University until February of 1920. Now, it couldn't be said that this was a begrudging or tokenistic effort on Oxford's part, although the distinguished scholar and jurist Professor Geldart, in explaining the provisions of the enabling statute, put it this way. He said, well, it doesn't seem to be any longer any good reason for refusing women graduates to congregation and convocation now that they had the vote. I ask, did there really have to be a good ground? But I digress, for the moment at least. Professor Geldart also observed, perhaps sort of he observed. I won't make a comment, I'll just tell you what he observed. That the admission of women would involve a considerable increase of income to the university. Now, the first woman to be awarded honours at Oxford was Annie Mary Ann Henley Rogers. She'd passed her exams in 1877, and she wasn't awarded her honours until 1927, when they were admitted 2 degrees. So, that first battle, the admission to a degree, had been won in what would still prove to be quite a long war of attrition. In 1920, women could study on the basis of getting a degree. 1927, 7 years later, Oxford had another vote, and on this occasion, it was to limit the number of women admitted to the university to a number that was less than a quarter of the number of men, a restriction which was not moved until 1948. And I've called them rights, were slow to come. Women's societies didn't become full colleges until 1959. Women were not admitted to debating membership of the Oxford Union until 1961, and to full membership of the Oxford Union Society until 1963. And of course, the Union Society was that place which was really a training ground for many of the future leaders, and in particular the politicians of England, the United Kingdom at that time. But Cambridge, which I could only describe as that stalwart of the status quo, didn't admit women at all to degrees until 1947, some 66 years after we did it here in Sydney in 1881. Vice-Chancellor, you lead a great university, can I say? But there was but one area where Oxford almost got the jump on colleges here in Sydney, and I'm afraid it did so in respect of St Andrews in particular, but not so your neighbour Sydney's Wesley College, because that became co-residential in 1969, 5 years before men's colleges at Oxford began to admit female students in 1974. And gradually over the next 15 years, there was a slow rollover to all colleges. Today, of course, we are here to celebrate St Andrews' milestone, 20 years of undergraduate women. You might ask, why then is my focus on a history which, except for my mention of Women's College, is so not Sydney and so not St Andrews? Well, there's a number of reasons. First, it's always so much fun to be one up on Oxford. And in fact, I think we're probably 2 up, 3 up, and we could keep going. Secondly, it's a matter of history. This is the history of female education. And history is about understanding the past to avoid the same mistakes in the future. And in that regard, I am going to suggest that it is not sufficient for an institution to say, look what we've done for women, or indeed for any group that has been excluded or sidelined or marginalised, until the institution understands what has been done, what had been done to that group, and why that was so. Let me put it another way. It's important to understand what the barriers were, the impacts those barriers had, and why there were even those barriers and those first impacts. And indeed, as principal, you were standing here rolling out your history, and can I say thank you for being so honest about all of it. But if I'd been standing here in 2000, just before the very first admission of women to the college, I would have been saying, as I'm sure Professor Ros Croucher, sorry Ros, I just know you so well as what, colleague, friend, my neighbour, Dorothy Hobbs, I'm sure they said it at the time, why are we even having this conversation in 2000? But can I say thank you, St Andrews, for having the conversation and acting upon it. But what are the impacts when you exclude people? With Oxford, admission to degrees was the first essential step. But without access to the full panoply of student benefits, it remained quite and indeed very exclusionary. It not only deprived generations of women of an education to which as a matter of intellect and talent they were entitled, it left itself and the society bereft of those intellects and that talent. But as I have said, today is your celebration. It's a celebration of 20 years of enrolment of women here, and you really do, St Andrews, have a right to be proud that you had the conversation, the hard conversations, and that you took that step. And now, of course, with 220 women in the college, more than half of your cohort, and of course, added to that, the appointment of alumnus Sasha Kovic as chair of the College Council. Congratulations. It is a great thing to celebrate. Sasha's own career is extraordinary, distinguished career in engineering and construction, and that in itself is a signal to the opportunities that exist for scholarship and employment generally for women, and particularly within the STEM field, so essential in 2022. And it just shows what is available to absolutely every person in our community who has, and every person should have the right to the education. But if you take Sasha's example, she has just demonstrated what is available to all genders in a way that will drive economic and technological change, as well as that absolutely essential social and cultural change. I don't have to tell an institution like this that challenges in Australia today, our challenges, are very much the challenges of our education and our education system. To answer those challenges, there will need to be boldness, sagacity, critical thinking, empathy and imagination, and being at St Andrews, every drop and dram of the spiritual and pragmatic strength conveyed by St Andrew's motto, Christo Ecclesiae Literis. It is a great honour for me to have been asked and to officially launch the celebration of 20 years of undergraduate women at St Andrew's College. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Governor. And I would now like to introduce the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Mark Scott, to give his speech.
Well, thank you very much. And can I also begin by thanking on you for the acknowledgement and pay my respects to traditional elders on the land in which we meet today, who've been discovering and educating on this space for tens of thousands of years. Your Excellency, Mr Wilson, Principal Wayne Erickson, and ladies and gentlemen, it's wonderful to be with you this afternoon to speak on behalf of the University of Sydney to our friends and our colleagues here at St Andrews to commemorate this important 20-year anniversary. And I was reflecting, and I suppose my comments echo the remarks we've heard from the Principal and the Governor this afternoon. There's much to commemorate, there's much to celebrate. There's a significant opportunity to reflect on the nature of change, and there are the inevitable challenges that still lie ahead that need to be addressed head on and to reflect on, given the experiences of the past. As the Governor said, the University of Sydney was one of the earliest universities in the world to enrol women back in 1881, and perhaps it was easier to break with long-established traditions dating back hundreds of years this far away from the scrutiny of the rest of the world, and in many ways reflected also in the early movement of Australian states to give women the vote. It was wonderful to admit women here at the University of Sydney in 1881. It's also interesting to reflect that it took more than a century till we had equal numbers of women and female and male students here at the university. We didn't see that until 1990. And it's interesting reflecting that it was in the 1980s that you really began to see the very strong performance and then the dominant performance of female students in the HSC, reflecting then through in the very strong enrolments here at the university from 1990. In 2002, when St Andrews went co-residential, women made up just more than 50% of our staff community here at the university, and 20 years later, women make up 58% of our staff here at the university. In 2002, we had 40,000 students. Now we have over 70,000 students at the university. And of these students, female students outnumber male students now. 57% of our students here at the university are female students. And we've had great role models of female leadership at the university. 3 strong, dominant chancellors, Professor Dame Leonie Kramer, the Governor Dame Mari Bashir, and now Belinda Hutchinson, the Chancellor of the university since 2013. We work in strong partnership with the colleges. We value working with them to create environments where students are welcomed and respected and students can flourish in their learning opportunities here at the university. And the rich history of the university and the history of the college is predicated on a foundation of inclusion and our opening doors to anyone who could flourish in their educational pursuits in our environment here at the university. So a great history, and I thought it was fascinating hearing Wayne reflect on the nature of the change here, debated over decades, that seemed so momentous, that required such courage, but then when implemented and now looked back with the hindsight of 20 years, seems obvious, almost self-evident, with the rewards so clear for us all to see today. And I suspect there are many issues that we're dealing with in society now that seem momentous change in a highly charged political environment that future generations will look back on and just wonder what took so long for what seemed to be so obvious and such benefits to accrue in the face of the evidence. So much to commemorate, much to celebrate, terrific opportunities to reflect on the nature of change as we bring it about in our community. And that puts a focus, I think, on the challenges that still lie ahead for us at the university, and I'm sure challenges that still lie ahead here at St Andrews College. One of the things we've been reflecting on this week at the university is around our commitment to gender equality as a workplace and our commitment to see gender equality in broader Australian society. On Thursday night, I was delighted to be involved in the launch of a new research centre at the university, the Gender Equality in Working Life Research Institute in our Faculty of Business, led by Professor Ray Cooper and Professor Liz Hill. Professor Cooper and Professor Hill are preeminent researchers around the challenge and the economic cost that gender inequality brings to Australian society, not just in terms of the lost economic potential of a society that is not delivering gender equality, but the significant social cost that comes on the back of that as well. And we were reflecting in that launch that all across the university there are centres that are doing truly innovative and complex research that could have global impact. We have teams working in nanotechnology, teams working in biotech at the Charles Perkins Centre, world-leading research on obesity and diabetes and eating disorders. All of these research efforts with an eye to translation research that would have impact. But if in fact the work that Professor Hill and Professor Cooper are doing could close that gender inequality gap, the economic benefit of that and the social impact of that to our society could be as profound as any of these other research areas that we are working on. And we are reflecting on the fact that as a university, not only do we want to do the research that builds the capability of Australian society to close that profound gap that exists, but we need to be a model institution ourselves in doing that. And whilst we can be thrilled that 57% of our staff are women at the university and feel that we're strongly committed to merit in our promotion schemes, we do reflect on the fact that at our most senior academic level, grade E, only 35% of our most senior academics at the university are women at this point, despite the generations that now have existed of women having at least equal roles in our university. And that reflects in our own backyard, in the decisions that we are making, the impediments that still exist around gender equality, and the impediments that the women of St Andrews despite all the opportunities that they have gained from their experience as students at the University of Sydney and their experience as being residential of college, what they might well see and encounter in the workplace that we need to be assisting and working to overcome. As Wayne referenced as well, I think we still remain challenged in Australian universities to ensure that no matter where students are studying and no matter where students are living, our female students in particular feel safe from any harassment or any behaviour that is related to their sexuality and their presence in a community as women. And it will still remain very sobering reading for every Australian university this week to read the Student Safety Survey completed by nearly 50,000 students across the country that still said far too many had experienced sexual harassment or sexual assault in and around a university environment. And as I said at the time, one case is too many. We've done a lot of work at the university, and the colleges have done a lot of work in recent years, and we've worked closely with people like Liz Broderick to help us understand and engage in these challenges. But we do reflect on the fact that there's no opportunity for complacency. More work needs to be done, and we owe that to the young people in our care, and we're committed to doing that. One of the things we're doing at the university now is we're thinking through our 10-year strategic plan. We're thinking through what it means to be a great university through to 2032, and beyond that, we have our sight of the bicentenary of the university, 2050, when the university turns 200. And that time goes very quickly. The days are long, the years are short, and the 10 years will be on us quickly. The bicentenary will be on us quickly. It's interesting, a child born by the time we get to 2022 will join you here in St Andrews in 2050, in time for the bicentenary. It will quickly be on us. And I've said to Wayne and I've said to the other leaders of the college, I do think the university has still a lot to learn from what is offered here in the colleges. Our research shows that students who flourish at university, who flourish in higher education, have four things that are attributes or four opportunities that really galvanise for them. The first is that they are engaged in their studies. They enjoy what they learn. They're interested by it. They're curious. That curiosity is fed by great teaching, and the studies are interesting. But that's not enough. Students who are really transformed by their learning, they make friends at the university. They make more friends than they arrived with. They make friends from different backgrounds, different cultures, different countries. And that experience of making new friends broadens them out. And those new friendships take them to new experiences. And those new experiences help transform them and make them bigger and make them different, so they graduate bigger and different than the people they were when they arrived. And also, the fourth element is an opportunity for mentoring, the opportunity to engage with more experienced people who provide them with guidance and support and mentoring as they go their way through. And if you have those four elements, then the ingredients are so right for a truly transformational experience here at a university that allows you then to go out and exhibit the leadership for good that we want to be a hallmark of a Sydney education. And there's no doubt that those four elements are delivered extensively and intensively here at St Andrews. It's actually the hallmark of the learning that takes place here. Encouragement of students' learning, encouragement of the development of lifelong friendships, opening the doors to further opportunities and strong mentoring and support. So as we continue this journey together, as we commemorate and celebrate, as we reflect on the nature of change and how change come about, and as we gird ourselves for the challenges ahead, I'm delighted on behalf of the University of Sydney to be here this afternoon to congratulate St Andrews on the great achievements of the last 20 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Scott. I'd now like to introduce Elizabeth Woodcock, who is our senior student, to give the students perspective.
Good afternoon, Her Excellency, the Honourable Margaret Beasley, Governor of New South Wales, Mr Wilson, Professor Mark Scott, Wayne, Principal-elect, and members of the St Andrews community. Today I've been asked to speak about my experience as a woman at Drews. Honestly, I've found it quite a challenge to write this speech, because when I think about my last 3 years at St Andrews, I struggle to think of anything that separated my experience from that of the men at this college, other than the fact that my room is probably a little bit cleaner than theirs. But the reality is, in my experience, I've been lucky enough to have been exposed to the same opportunities and successes as my male counterparts across all aspects of college life. Firstly, the women at St Andrews are excelling in sport, not only in Rose Bowl, but in our own female-led social touch football and rugby sevens competitions, where we're absolutely dominating the other colleges. We're also increasingly achieving in academics, with many of St Andrews' highest academically performing students being women. And in performing arts this year, majority of our secretary positions are filled by women. And in addition, both of our solo vocalist submissions and our competitive dance team are made entirely up of women. I'm lucky that I can say my experience has not been different from that of the men in this college, because I understand it may not be the same case in other universities around Australia and across the world. But it has certainly been a journey to reach this point, which is why I'd like to take a moment to reflect on just how far Andrews women have come. When we arrived in 2002, we participated in our first Rose Bowl sporting competition. It took us 2 years to finally win our first sport, the tennis. It was a slow start for our girls, but it didn't take long for us to take home the Rose Bowl Cup just 4 years later, in 2006. And Andrews women have been making waves ever since. We've produced 2 Olympians in water polo and sailing, and St Andrews were actually the first college to win all 8 Rose Bowl sports in 1 year, in 2010. It puts a great smile on my face to say that in my time at college, this has now become the new normal. We've truly come so far. Aside from sporting, we've produced a Rhodes Scholar, doctors, lawyers, engineers, and hundreds of women with incredible careers. In 2004, the first woman was appointed to the Student Executive Leadership Team. And in 2015, we had our first ever female senior student. And now, being the college's 3rd female senior student, and being the 2nd time that we've had an all-female executive team, it is a privilege to be carrying on these incredible achievements and to be a part of such a remarkable history for St Andrews. And I hope that the future women of St Andrews will continue to thrive and enjoy the experience just as much as we have. In closing, attending a college like St Andrews with such a powerful co-educational atmosphere means that I have been equipped with the tools necessary to thrive in the world beyond the college's gates. Drews has given me the confidence to stand up against gendered injustices, socially and in the workplace, because I've been shown that this is never acceptable. Drews has given me the passion to support other women in their endeavours, and Drews has allowed me to form lifelong relationships with other strong women and gentlemen who respect us and are our number one fans. And for each of these benefits, on behalf of all the women who have shared this experience at Drews, I would like to sincerely give the college a great big thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Liz. And now we move on to a really important part of today, which is the awarding of the inaugural 20 Years of Undergraduate Women's Scholarship. And I want to just give a shout out to Hannah and her team and all of the staff that have been very involved in getting this scholarship up and going, and the people that have donated money to get it going. Thank you so much, guys, so far. So what we're going to do is we're going to have the presentation. So I'll invite our principal to come up and speak, and the governor to come and present, and Anna, where are you, to come up and receive.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to introduce you to the inaugural recipient of a new scholarship established by the College Council to mark the 20th year of undergraduate women in New South Wales, in St Andrews. This young woman hails from Grenfell in country New South Wales. She comes to us from the Henry Lawson High School in Grenfell, where she was the 2021 school captain. She was the Student of the Year in 2018, 19, 20 and 21. She won an academic... What happened in 2017? She won an Academic Excellence Award in each of the years 7 to 12, where she placed first in every year. And she was, of course, Dux of Year 12. She's enrolled at the University of Sydney, studying the first year of a Bachelor of Nursing in Advanced Studies. Outside the lecture hall, her main interest among many is soccer. She is a member of the National Premier League squad at Sydney University Soccer Football Club and is a scholarship holder in the university's elite athlete program. In underage soccer, she was captain of New South Wales Country's under-13s and under-15s girls football team over 3 years at national championships. She was a member of the Junior Matildas, the national underage women's team in 2018 and 19, travelling to Kyrgyzstan and Laos. In her HSC, she still found time to play for various New South Wales schools teams in representative championships and captained the Canberra United Academy National Premier League team. Of course, she plays the saxophone and the clarinet. And in 2020, she was the Wedenshire Lions Club Youth of the Year. Her older sister, Claire, was a member of college from 2017 until 2020, but I suspect that this remarkable young woman before you will make her own history in St Andrews. We're delighted that Her Excellency the Governor has consented to present for the first time the 20 Years of Undergraduate Women Scholarship. Please welcome our first recipient, Anna Hunt.
Thank you so much, and congratulations, Anna. I'm now going to ask the Reverend Dr. Gareth Clayton to give a prayer of dedication.
Well done, Anna. The ship's in good shape. Today we acknowledge and give thanks to God for the women and men who together give strength, meaning, vision and inspiration to the community of St Andrews College and all that it embraces. We acknowledge and are grateful for those over more than 150 years who have been courageous, determined and faithful in following visions that have encouraged the search for and commitment to justice and truth for all members of our community. And I'm glad to have been a member of the College Council and to have had the opportunity to vote for the college to become co-residential. I'm also glad to have had the opportunity, as initially a member of the council for 8 years, and for the last 14 years as college chaplain, to see the remarkable and inspiring way that decision has influenced the college community and its wonderful achievements in the best dimensions of the Enlightenment. Let us pray. We thank you, Father, for the persistent efforts of the men and women of our college community who work together with strength of character to develop within that community a strong sense of belonging, respect and encouragement to create a college that is safe and supportive even in tough times. We thank you too that our women and men are well to the fore in fulfilling St Paul's plea to the Galatians to help carry one another's burdens. We are grateful, O God, for the vision of a college council that was able to see that embracing undergraduate women within the college community would not only add to and enhance the remarkable values and traditions of our great college, but would give even more significance to the motto of our college, for Christ, for the church, and for learning. We thank you for those undergraduate women who for 20 years have courageously, with strength of character and in a spirit of true friendship and understanding, added significantly to the achievements, traditions and successes of St Andrew's College. O God, may we continue together to grow and develop in ways that will honour the college and its community for Christ, the Church, and learning. Perhaps one more comment from me as a benediction. I'm proud to have been for about the last 25 years the patron of the Rands Naval Women's Association of New South Wales. The late Admiral Sir David Martin, when he was Governor of New South Wales, unveiled a memorial to the Wartime Services women. In the course of his remarks, he said, "Who were they? Women, people, Australians. There is no other and no better way to describe them. They were the world's best, and they still are." And I couldn't agree more, Sir David. On this very special occasion, with a little licence and translation, I too would like to acknowledge in the context of today. Who are they? Women, people, Androvians. There is no better way to describe them. They are the best, and we pray they always will be. Women of St Andrew's College, I salute you.
Thank you so much, Gareth. I'd now like to invite the Choir of St Andrews up to perform for us. Led by Charlotte MacDonald, one of our students, the student group will perform 7 Principles by Bernice Johnson Regan of Sweet Honey in the Rock.
Umoja,
Unity that brings us together.
Umoja,
Unity that brings us together.
Umoja,
Unity that brings us together. Kujichagalia. 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 Working and building a union. Working and building a union. Working and building a union. We'll spend our money wisely. We'll spend our money wisely. We'll spend our money wisely. We know the purpose of our lives. We know the purpose of our lives. We know the purpose of our lives. All that we touch is more beautiful. All that we touch is more beautiful. All that we touch is more beautiful. We believe that we can, we know that we can, we will anyway. That we can.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. We're now coming to the end of our official part of the celebration. Before we do end, though, I do want to give my thanks to all the staff, all the hard work that they've done putting together this amazing ceremony that we've just seen. The amount of work. we'll move on. But look, just thank you so much to all the staff for all your hard work. It's been brilliant. I do also want to just flag to everybody that we do have some really wonderful merchandise for all genders. It's for sale up the back there. Go and have a look. Please, all proceeds from that merchandise will go to the scholarship. So please go and have a look. But please join us for some refreshments and it'd be great to catch up with everybody and have a chat. But thank you so much for coming along today. Thank you to the official party and thank you for everybody that was involved.